Hey everybody, welcome back to the Compulang podcast. My name is Jacob and this is the episode for the 16th of November 2020. So we're going to actually change the format a little bit today. So I'm going to talk about 4 little things that I found interesting in the news, and then I'm going to talk about a topic that is hopefully a little bit more timeless than just a news story. So stay tuned for that. The first thing that we're going to look at today, if you are involved in the internet at all, you probably have a Google account, and I know that Android phones have something like, 70%, 75% mobile phone market share. So chances are you have a Google account and your photos that you take on your Android smartphone are being uploaded to Google Photos. Should know that as of June of next year, so June 1st of 2021, they will actually be changing the requirements or changing their policies around the photo storage. So currently you can store an unlimited number of photos and videos on Google Photos if you select their high quality compression algorithm instead of storing them at original quality. So if you store them at high quality, then you would get just unlimited photo and video storage. But now Google is changing that again as of June of 2021. So you still have a lot of time with that unlimited photo and video storage, but they'll be changing that. So your photos and videos will now count against your Google Drive quota, as well as they're changing it for Google Docs and stuff as well. So, according to my Google Photos usage, I'm not going to be in any sort of a hard place. I just am using the free 15 gigabytes that comes with every Google account, and I'm going to be just fine. So probably not anything to worry about. And also, if you are running close to your 15 gigabyte limit, subscribing to Google One, which is their plan for getting more storage, is only about $2 a month for 100 gigabytes, which should last the average person quite a while. So not too big of a change, but that is what is going on with Google Photos. The next thing that I found interesting in the news this week was Spacex. Of course, I think that Spacex is a pretty cool company, and they apparently they've been contracting with NASA since about 2014, and they just launched 4 astronauts over to the International Space Station on Sunday. So I'm recording this really early Monday morning, so that was just yesterday. As of the recording of this episode, the astronauts are currently in flight, and I'm going to clip in a little bit of the audio from this video from SpaceX, and I found it on Reuters. Again, as always, all of the links to my sources are in the description, so here's a clip from that video.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
SpaceX launched 4 astronauts into orbit on Sunday, marking a major milestone for NASA. It was their first full-fledged mission on board a privately owned spacecraft.
And resilience rises. Not even gravity contains humanity when we explore as one for all.
So you heard it in the video, and so for the next 27 hours following that launch, they are going to be flying over to the International Space Station. They say they should be docking at about 11 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday. So that was just a really cool thing that I saw in the news. Got to see the guys walking around in their cool custom spacesuits, and that just, thought that was pretty cool. All right, next up, obviously I'm a YouTuber, so I care about YouTube news, and YouTube was down for 2 hours on the 12th of November, which of course, obviously with everyone in quarantine, made the internet absolutely explode. Somehow, despite the fact that I'm pretty sure I'm on YouTube about 23 and a half hours a day, I managed to miss this 2-hour window, and I didn't actually notice it. So that was news to me when I heard about that. Also, YouTube news, they're going to be canceling Rewind. If you're familiar with YouTube Rewind. It's kind of what YouTube does or used to do, I guess, where they would kind of make a compilation of all of the trends, big popular videos, and stuff from the past year, and then kind of maybe get some creators to come in and do some custom skits or whatever, and then just make this big mashup of a video that kind of celebrates the past year in YouTube. And so they announced in this tweet, they said, since 2010, we've ended the year with Rewind, a look back on the year's most impactful creators, videos, and trends. Whether you love it or only remember 2018, so 2018 was the last year that they brought in a whole bunch of creators to do it, and then YouTube Rewind 2018 ended up being the most disliked video on all of YouTube. So whether you love it or only remember 2018, Rewind was always meant to be a celebration of you. But 2020 has been different, and it doesn't feel right to carry on as if it weren't. So we're taking a break from Rewind this year. And they have a couple more sentiments there, but pretty much that is their announcement for canceling Rewind 2020. So yeah, is this going to be the end of an era? I remember always looking forward to YouTube Rewind, and then we got to 2018 and I stopped looking forward to it, and then 2019 was kind of a cop-out, and so are we just done with YouTube Rewind now? I don't know, but I do know that a bunch of other YouTube creators are making like their own versions of YouTube Rewind, and I'm sure you'll be able to find those on YouTube when they are released. But yeah, so no official YouTube Rewind this year. And then the last thing that I'm going to mention, the last news story that I'm going to mention is something from the AP. Where they say the FTC says that Zoom misled users on its security for meetings. That's just the headline there from the AP. Again, links in the description or the show notes or wherever you're listening to this. So, surprise, surprise, more security issues with Zoom. So if you've been following Zoom or following the news about Zoom for a bit now, you'll know they've had a couple issues and kerfuffles with security in the past. This is yet another in a list of a few. Apparently they were still holding on to the cryptographic keys that would essentially allow them to decrypt meetings. So I mean typically with any sort of service where you're sending information going even like to their servers or even passing through their servers, you probably shouldn't just implicitly trust their servers with anything beyond the bare minimum. So, I mean, to someone like me, this is not too big of a deal because just by default, just don't trust companies. Technology is not something that you should inherently trust. It's something you should inherently distrust. So whenever you're sending information to a third-party server, I mean, unless somehow like you know that it's secure, you should always assume that it's not secure. Just always better safe than sorry is kind of the idea there. So essentially, the FTC said that Zoom engaged in a series of deceptive and unfair practices that undermine the security of its users. And so some people are mad about that. I'm frankly not terribly surprised. But yeah, there's a quote at the end of the article. Someone named Rohit Chopra, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, I'm sorry. But he says that Zoom has cashed in on the pandemic and it stands ready to emerge as a tech titan, but we should all be questioning whether Zoom and other tech titans expanded their empires through deception. Zoom could have taken the time to ensure that its security was up to the right standards. That's the end of the quote, and I would just like to add on, it could have taken the time to ensure that security was up to the right standards, and it appears that they did not and have not. So, but honestly, I'm still going to use Zoom because I never really trusted it much in the first place. So that's just how that's going to go. Okay, so that's it for the news stories I'm going to talk about today. And then I'm going to move into another section where hopefully this will be less like newsy and more referencey conversational style type thing. So the topic I'm going to talk about for the next couple minutes is what you should expect from a computer science degree. So I'm currently in my senior year of college, and I am majoring in computer science, and I've been programming, working in computer science, working with computers for much longer than I've been in college. And I had jobs at software companies before I even started college. So I have a lot of experience with programming. I was making YouTube videos before I started college, and so this has been going on for a while. And now that I am just about finished up with my computer science degree, I'd like to talk about a few things that you could expect from getting a degree in computer science. First, I'm going to list out a whole bunch of pros, and there are actually a lot of pros to getting a computer science degree. Namely, like, you get to work with researchers, you get to learn from researchers, people who have done like groundbreaking research in artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision, all these kinds of things, right? And you can learn directly from them. So you can be on the very cutting edge of some of the development of this technology. You'll get to work in a bunch of different programming paradigms. I know before I started college, I didn't have just a ton of experience with functional programming specifically, but then I took a class or two that used exclusively a functional programming language, and I kind of fell in love with it, and I learned a lot from that class. So that exposed me to, functional programming in its purest form, one could say. And I think that was a good influence on me and my programming style. The next thing is, since you're getting like all these assignments and you have to get them graded, essentially that means that you're going to have eyes on your code all the time. Your code will be manually reviewed most of the time, and you'll learn actually a little bit of how the development environment in the real world is. If for example your professor, your class provides you with automated tests of some sort, or like test files with like, this is what your output should be, even something as simple as that'll get you used to testing your code, and that's a really good skill to have when you go into industry. Also, having eyes on your code all the time, people will be able to comment on your code and say something like, you did this in an inefficient manner, or, here's the issue with this code here. So, right, that's essentially what grading is, right? That's how that works. Another benefit to getting a computer science degree is that you're going to have guided learning, meaning that you'll take a course on artificial intelligence. You'll take a course on computational linear algebra or something like that. And you'll go from ground zero to, maybe you have a basic understanding, or you'll go from having a basic understanding to having an intermediate understanding, and it'll be guided. You'll have people there teaching you, people who you can consult, and you don't have to put in the effort of figuring out what to learn, right? That's a big issue that some people encounter with like self-guided learning, is figuring out what you need to learn in the first place. So guided learning, big advantage in that respect. The next thing is, if you're getting a computer science degree, you're getting a degree, right? You're going to be certified. So that already, like, good marks on a resume, you're going to have a degree. Great. And then the last one is, you might end up working in some areas that you might not have thought to be interesting, but once you started working in that area, it became interesting to you. And again, I guess I could kind of throw out that functional programming example. If it were up to me, I probably never would have picked up a functional programming language just of my own volition, but I had to take this class. So then I did, and I thought the functional programming language was pretty fun. So that's just an example of how when you're in college, you might have to take some classes you might not find interesting in the first place, but once you have to take them, maybe it wasn't so bad after all. All right, that is the list of pros that I have for your computer science degree and what you can expect from it, but there are also definitely some cons. There are some really major ones that I'd really like to expand on a bit. So the first and probably the biggest one, is that getting a computer science degree doesn't really prepare you for industry. And actually, I'm not entirely sure that it's intended to, because computer science is very distinct from software engineering. If you become a computer scientist, or I guess I just gave it away, if you get a computer science degree, they're kind of prepping you to become a computer scientist, right? Which lends itself more towards being a researcher, right? Not necessarily a software developer where you're like, okay, I'm going to make a website, or okay, I'm going to, make the next big application or the next big game or something like that. It doesn't necessarily prepare you for industry in that respect. It probably prepares you better to be working on some sort of like maybe an R&D team, or even staying in academia and being a researcher, a computer scientist, right? So that's a distinction between like getting a software engineering or software development degree and a computer science degree. So this is actually something that I had a basic understanding of when I started college, but I kind of figured, yeah, computer science degree, right? I'll learn software development along the way, right? Not so much. So if your university that you're looking at offers a software development or software engineering degree, and that's what you want to do that degree, because computer science isn't necessarily going to get you. It's not going to necessarily prepare you for industry unless you want to work in R&D, which, maybe you do. The next thing is that college classes, surprisingly, don't tend to get updated as often as the technologies do. I recall just a couple years ago, I took a Java class, and I think they were still using Java 5, and Java 8 was out. And then even more recently, a different Java class I took was using Java 6, and jeepers, by that point in time, Java 8 was, a couple years old. I don't remember the exact timeline, but I'm going to say Java 8 had already been out for a few years and they were still on Java 6. So just that as an example, not necessarily always using the most up-to-date technologies. I remember looking at a class listing for a different one of my classes or different class at my university about like web technologies, and just some of the technologies that were listed were something like dynamic HTML, which is kind of like the idea that you have an HTML page that, you send off data to the server and then it comes back with a different HTML page or something like that. Not entirely clear exactly how dynamic HTML was supposed to work, because that was something that was big back in 2005, and was replaced by Ajax, which, asynchronous JavaScript and XML, where you actually use JavaScript to send back to the server instead of doing a full like reload of the page with a form or something like that. And in 2020, this is what the class listings are. You're going to learn dynamic HTML and another web technology, Java. Didn't say Java applets, but I mean, given the age of the other technologies that were mentioned in the class description, I could only wonder if they were trying to teach developers or students in 2020 to develop Java applets as a web technology. Java applets have been dead, like explicitly not supported anymore for years. All this to say, going to college for a computer science degree, you're not going to be learning the new cool stuff in class. You're going to be learning stuff from 2005. Okay, the next thing is that computer science degree can be really expensive. And this probably comes at no surprise to anyone who's considered college before. College is expensive. Depending on where you go, you could be looking at, tens of thousands of dollars to even hundreds of thousands of dollars for a 4-year degree. And especially when you're looking at programming jobs, you don't necessarily even need a degree. What you need to get a good programming job is obviously you need the soft skills. If you've talked to anyone who's in like business before, like soft skills, that's half the battle. The rest of it is competence or something like that. But you have to have the soft skills. So that's really important. So you need the soft skills. You need the technical skills. But like I've mentioned, like you're not necessarily going to be learning directly necessarily the technical skills that you need for a job. So you're going to need to have a portfolio, right? You're going to need to have a portfolio outside of class, outside of your schoolwork. You're going to need to be working on personal projects. And this is kind of something that I've, while thinking about this, that's kind of the perspective I had behind some of my YouTube videos that are in like my mini project series. Is the idea is you can build one of these mini projects. You can build tic-tac-toe, you can build poker, you can build a chat room, you can do something like that, and then, make it big, have fun with it, work on it, and then put it on your resume, because that's what people want to see. They want to see that you have the portfolio, you have the experience, you know how to learn technologies by yourself. Because if you're working at like a startup or a company that's using any sort of modern programming technology, you're not just going to like go to college, learn that, and then you're set for the rest of your life. No, you have to be able to look up the documentation on your own, read the documentation, understand it. You have to be able to find the answers on Stack Overflow, find the answers on Reddit by yourself, understand them, trial and error by yourself with new technologies that no one's taught you before. Because new technologies, if you're using a modern web stack, at least, modern technologies are changing so fast. Like, what version of Angular are they even on now? I've lost count, but they release a new version of Angular like more than once a year, I think. And it just moves so fast. You can't rely on your college education to be the end all for your programming education. You always have to be learning in this industry. And that's what people want to see on your resume. They want to see that you have the experience, right? You have a portfolio, that these are projects that you've worked on your own time, and you taught yourself this technology, right? And you taught yourself to competence in this technology. That's what people want to see. So that's my spiel about that. And the last thing about the college education is that it's time consuming, right? It takes 4 years. And again, going back to what people actually want to see in jobs, you don't necessarily need the 4-year degree. You can get just as good, if not better, a job if you just go to like a 6-month boot camp or something like that. There's a really good website out there called Free Code Camp. Free Code Camp. I'm typing it in right now. Just give me a sec. So freecodecamp.org, they have like these full project listings where you can build a project, follow their tutorials, and add it to your resume. They will certify you, and it's significantly less expensive, significantly less time consuming than anything you'll see at college. And guess what? Like, okay, college degree, great. It's great to have a college degree, but if you want to get a good job, if you want to be dynamic in the job market, the college degree isn't going to cut it beyond your first job, because you have to prove that you can continue to augment your own education yourself, whether this means watching YouTube videos, reading documentation, staying up to date with the news, just maybe continually going to workshops or seminars or boot camps. You have to be able to stay on top of this by yourself. And that's what people really want to see in jobs. And the college education, it looks great on a resume, but unless you retain these skills and constantly are using them and augmenting them, the college education really isn't going to get you as far as you think in this industry where it's constantly changing. All right. So that is my spiel about what to expect from a computer science degree. Obviously, there are a lot of good points. I went through 6 good points at the beginning. That's different programming paradigms, learn from researchers, have different people's eyes on your code at all times. You get manual review, guided learning. You can get certified, and you work in areas that are new to you that might be unfamiliar. And I only listed out 5 cons, so that it doesn't necessarily prepare you for industry, depending on the industry. Can use old and outdated technologies. It's expensive, time consuming, and it doesn't not necessarily give you the experience you need to land a good job. Like, I'm going to be a web developer and I'm learning how to do Fourier transforms in C or something like that. Not necessarily particularly relevant, but you do need to be dynamic. You have to be able to learn these things. So that's the summary. If you enjoyed that spiel, I'm considering kind of changing the format of the CompuLang podcast to have more just like a couple marginally like interesting news stories at the beginning, nothing too weighty. I'm not going to talk politics at you, nothing like that. Maybe a bit about privacy, and then just have a bit at the end where we talk about an interesting question or an interesting topic. And as always, feel free to submit a question. I put these episodes on YouTube and on Anchor, where it's distributed to a bunch of platforms like Apple and Spotify and Castbox and other weird podcast platforms I've never heard of before. But like, if you want to ask a question, you can leave a comment on the YouTube video. That's at the GeekLaunch YouTube channel, or you can send in a voice message to the anchor.fm/CompuLang. There's like a place there to send in voice messages. So you can send in a voice message. I'll accept that as a question, maybe a topic to talk about, something you want me to talk about. And so sometimes I have guests on too, so maybe we'll talk about it with a guest. So leave comments. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I always enjoy recording them because, I just like staying up to date with this type of thing and then going on massive rants about CS degrees. But yeah, hope you enjoyed it. And I will talk to you next week. Goodbye.